Or again, Hollywood film scripts. Often these days we're not looking at the film in order to localize it, to have it dubbed, for example, or to do the subtitling. The film comes with a script which contains many, many cultural notes, which are going to help us solve the translation problems even before they arrive, even before they turn up. That would be a case of practical localization, as would what's being done in Bible translation these days. So localization in itself is not radically new, but the terms are new and useful. What is happening to the professions? It means that a lot of language technicians are no longer focusing on translation as such. We're doing a lot of things like controlled writing. A lot of work on terminology is very important, and the role of translation memories is very important within these kinds of projects. I would like to, that's what's good about localization. It gives us terms for things and things that have to be talked about. It also realizes, as Skopos theory did, perhaps intuitively at that stage, that translators have to do more than just translate, and translators have to work with many other professions and many other experts these days. However, there are some things about localization, even in the terms that are used, that we should think about critically. For example, translators work on texts, usually. And we learnt that the text is complex, it involves people and notes and things, and it's really a project, fair enough. Within localization, we work on projects, but the things that are translated become information objects, become small fragment chunks, which have a fixed semantic content, fixed in terms of convention, fixed in terms of stable artificial terminology and artificial syntax, thanks to controlled writing. These information objects are written and localized in such a way that they are not to be used in a linear fashion. Texts usually are conceived of as something that begins at the beginning and ends at the end, and you start there and you read and use the text and get to there. Not so with information objects. The user, not a reader, the user is looking for information and they want to find it fast. They use Control F or something, some search engine, some Control Find function, and get to just the fragment they want. There's no sense of reading or using a text in a linear function. This means that communication, the fact of a person talking to a person, has virtually been done away with. Communication is now an internationalized object which has been taken away from any culture it might have once been attached to. It's actually been put into a professionalized technician's paradise somewhere in the center of the globalized world. That is, its unnamed locale. And it is there in such a way that whoever comes along to do the localization simply has to obey the rules. If you're a translator working on localization projects, they will tell you, don't be creative. Use the terminology, obey the rules, and all will go well. There's no sense of communication. There's no sense of telling a story. There's no sense of saying, as we learned in chapter 1. I find this a very dehumanized way of looking at the use of language. What's happening also is that translation as such becomes, therefore, work on small text fragments. You know, translation memory software takes a text and divides it up into phrases and will then automatically translate the phrases that match. So the translator is going to work on those phrases and the phrases that don't match. And that's it. We're back to equivalence in the very narrow sense. In the narrowest of linguistic senses, in the 1950s, this was a kind of equivalence that Vinay and Daubelnet might have dreamt of. Back to square one. All that work that went into uncertainty, indeterminacy, coming to terms with it, studying the social uses of language, studying empirical variation within translational processes, all the terminology invested in the Skopos theory, in the idea of purpose and loyalty and fidelity, etc. All of that comes to no avail when the translator is locked into a localization project, made to use a translation memory, and is just going phrase for phrase, stick to the rule book. Also, translators are thereby separated from the most lucrative parts of a localization project, the kind of thing that goes on in project management or product reengineering. Worse, well, you get paid, you get very well paid, I guess, in terms of translation, literary translation, you get more in a localization project, but by the same token, translators are being separated from humanizing discourse. They're also separated from the marketing aspects. I mean, marketing is not a dehumanized discourse insofar as it takes active interest in the present vitality and future of cultural difference. But translators within localization projects are being separated from the money and from the fun. And what we often find is they don't stay there long. Translators working in localization projects often shift to these more lucrative or more entertaining ends of a localization project. Translation itself, though, is stuck into the rut of rule-obeying technical phrase replacement. That's why we should pay attention to localization theory. Not because it's a better theory of translation, but because it's making translation nothing better than the very narrowest form of equivalence. We therefore get back to square one.